Welcome back to Inside the World of Box Lacrosse. See, I should just say it wobble. It's a lot easier. I'm Stephen Stamp with Adam Levy and Greg Beecher here on Blue Squatch Productions and Inside the Cross. Thanks for being with us. And as promised, as hinted at, as foreshadowed, we are talking about the two big trades. We'll start with the first one, Eric Fennell, whom Albany had acquired in the offseason. They basically, he missed all of last season. They got him from Halifax because Halifax had brought in Dawson Theed, kind of a similar role. I think people thought Fennell would be that grinder, be that open things up for the offense. It just didn't seem to quite click.
Yeah.
And they've sent him to Ottawa, where I think Ottawa's pretty excited to get him in there for a pick. And what do you think?
Well, I think it is interesting, and I know that we had texted about this, Stamper. You've now got a very loaded left side there on the Black Bears offense. So it'll be interesting once O'Connor's healthy and once, you've got all these pieces working, who are they going to go with on a week-to-week basis? Or do they keep switching it up? Is this going to be kind of an offense by committee and sacrifice kind of thing? But, Fennell had proven himself in his last year in Halifax as a good player, 29 goals, 23 assists. Can he get back to that? I think that having spoken to Jacob Dunbar this week and his season that he's been having, one of the things that he kept hitting home with me in our conversation was this is completely offensive by committee. And nobody wants to be the guy. He specifically was noting that even Jeff Teat, he said, would rather assist one of his teammates on a goal than score a goal himself. And whether
that's the guy who's led the league in goals the last 2 years, right? Side note, Jeff Teat also did offer to the coaches that if they needed him to play defense, he'd do it if that was the best thing for the team.
Yeah, and I believe that Jeff loves lacrosse and loves winning enough that he will do whatever it takes. Yeah. He's been a true leader for that team, and that's why he has the C on his chest. But it's going to be interesting, again, as I said, how they work all those pieces on the left.
Yeah, especially, you'd mentioned before Nathan Grennan hasn't really played a whole lot. I know people were really excited when he came in, especially, because he's a local guy. He scored that one goal from way downtown, but that's all he produced.
Right.
And, you don't have to score to be, you can play that agitator role, and Grennan does a lot of good stuff. But, I think Ottawa's just looking for some, still tweaking the chemistry, trying to get it right and make the most of Jeff Teat, because he's, obviously one of the best players in the world. Yeah. And are they getting everything they could out of Jeff Teat right now? And how do you best support him?
Well, it's funny that we say that because I was looking it up, and he's actually outpacing John Tavares in points throughout this part in his career. So it's funny that we can be like, well, Jeff Teat could be doing more. He's literally doing better than the greatest of all time in points. But also
the team could be doing more.
That's true. That is true. They actually the lowest in the league in shots on goal per game. So offensively, it would be amazing if Jeff Teat and that offense could more look like Rochester, at least in terms of shots on goal.
Mm-hmm. They've got to bring that together now. Obviously, Riley O'Connor and Connor Kiernan out, huge factors as we've talked about. I think I like Fennell as an addition for them. They don't play it. Maybe, I don't know if you want to call it frenetic, but the pace that Albany plays at last year was so much about quickness and moving around. Yeah. And Fennell, that's not really his thing. He's not a water bug, Kyle Buchanan type, like flitting all over. He's going to get in there and do the hard work for you. But I think I like the addition for Ottawa. I don't mind for Albany. Now, one of the reasons Albany made this trade is they drafted Carson Moyer and really liked him. They had to make a trade to get a veteran D last year. They've got Anthony Jochum from Colorado. They had to send Carson Moyer over. Colorado really liked Moyer as well, but this year they get Will Malcolm in, and there's just not really a spot for Moyer, so he gets released. He's a street free agent. And Glenn Clark said he would have been in the mix if they hadn't had to trade him. He would have been in the mix starting this year, so he's going to get a shot. And I know Daryl Gibson coached him in Coburg in MSL and loves him and was really advocating for them to take Moyer. So they got a steal on him at 32nd in the draft because I don't think people knew he was in the draft, partly because I didn't know he was in the draft. That's a big part for them.
And this is going to be interesting to see the development of both Moyer and, look at the work that GM Clark put in, to get Callum Crawford. Last year, Clark won GM of the year in the National Lacrosse League. Do these moves of getting Moyer and Crawford really pay off to the point where you're like, okay, this guy really knows the talent that's going to work for his club?
And it's funny, when you look at coaches and GMs. I remember one trade, and I was talking to Glenn Clark about it because they got someone. I think they got Evan Kirk or something, and I said, "Hey, congratulations! You just became like a 2 goals per game better coach." I mean, it's the players and the coaches will tell you that. You do all the work, you set the systems, and you put it into effect, and then the players have to do it. But any last thoughts? Are we going on to the what turned into a bigger trade?
Yeah, let's go on to the next one.
Yeah. So all San Diego and Las Vegas, as we talked about earlier, Dylan Watson, who was the 2nd overall pick back in 2022, is sent to the San Diego Seals in exchange for Drew Belgrave and a 2nd rounder in 2027. That's a not insignificant pick because 27 is a great draft, but Belgrave, who's a bit later pick, he's a defender, he's a 28-year-old. It's, that's not what you're looking to get back for a guy you picked 2nd overall.
Yeah, and it's very interesting too. I'll actually be speaking with Drew on Friday about the trade. When I had initially texted him, he was not necessarily sure how to feel at the moment. He was the longest tenured San Diego Seal on that roster, but he comes into a team that does need defensive help. Dylan Watson, a former Hill Academy athlete, so Patrick Merrill obviously knows him and knows what he's capable of. So does he feel like his system and his relationship can help this young kid really break out like he was expected to, obviously being drafted 2nd overall?
So one thing that is interesting to me, you look at San Diego, and we've talked about how many lefty forwards they had in camp. They had a ton of guys. They brought Ty Thompson back. He was in camp and didn't stick around then, but they have him back. They were playing Zach Currier and Trent DeChico up front. I think Currier's probably going back at the back door more now, but they have a ton of lefty forwards once again. They still got Kyle Jackson. They've got Ryan Benesh, who's been great. They've got Adam Noakes, DeChico, Thompson. It's just all these lefties. Like, how do you fit them in?
Yeah, that's a great question, but I also feel like it was an important trade, for however the team wanted to look at it. This is the first time in franchise history that the Seals have not scored 10 goals in 3 consecutive games. So they are in a historic franchise slump right now. And, sometimes, when you get new young blood into the team, I think that it's important to shake things up. Say, hey, look, you've got some guy who wants to take your spot up there. So you talk about the amount of lefties. It'll be interesting for sure. But I think that they'll definitely need to figure it out sooner rather than later.
I think for Dylan Watson, an interesting thing, sometimes, a player's taken, he was their first pick, right? Their first draft pick ever.
Yep.
Right. And that's a lot of pressure. And you expect, this guy's going to be the face of the franchise. And that's not really the type of player he is. Dylan Watson's very good. I think, though, in San Diego, where you've got Benesh and Jackson, and some other guys that are going to take on the more spotlight, he can fit perfectly into his role as a really good complementary player. He does a lot of things well on the lacrosse floor. He won't have to be the guy who's remembered as the first pick in franchise history. And also
learning so much from guys who know so much. I know that talking to Jacob Dunbar again, he said that while he didn't play a lot in San Diego, it was the fact that he was just learning every single game, every single practice to be able to pick the brains of guys like Dobie, Dixon, and others, Berg. It was invaluable to him, and you're seeing it pay off for him. So does that happen for Watson as the years go on, because he gets to play with such incredible offensive guys?
Yeah. What about the addition of Belgrave to the Las Vegas defense? Because I think it's an interesting one. I remember watching Drew Belgrave as a rookie or as a youngster. He was drafted by Toronto, eventually went over to San Diego, where he really got his chance to play. And I remember watching him because I'd seen him play earlier, and he was kind of a right turn guy, where if he got the ball and was running up, he'd just pass it off and head to the bench, take a right turn to the bench. And I thought, why are you so shy to go? And that was something they worked on him with, because he just felt like there were all these terrific players, and you could see he was a youngster, but he has developed so well. Both his defensive game and his transition game, where you watch him now and he is so confident, and he's such a steady player, and still has his athleticism, that I think that is a great addition for Vegas.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the again one of those important things to say. I know he's a little bit older, but like it's a young team in Las Vegas, and you need that veteran presence to kind of help things out a little bit. I think it'll be very beneficial for a guy like Landon Kells, who relies on the defense in front of him and is seeing so many shots. Give him a little bit more confidence that he has Belgrave in front of him. So I think it's a move that makes sense, especially for where both teams stand right now. And I think that Belgrave, whatever he does, statistically speaking, I know he's a well-liked guy within the locker rooms that he's a part of. So I think that's always a win.
Not to harp on this whole, first pick in franchise history, second overall, but it's hard not to look at the trade that was a factor in Dylan Watson's pick, where Las Vegas sent Connor Fields,
Yeah,
who was in the MVP talk last year, Riley Hutchcraft, their starting goalie, and Thomas McCombie, the first pick. So they took Thomas McCombie. That is what Vegas sent. And in return, they got Charlie Bertrand, who's retired now. That's a tough one because he was a rising player, but he wasn't in the conversation with those top guys.
Yeah.
So they get the second. So to flip from first, they go down to second. Could have had McCombie, could have kept Fields. They got a fourth and a sixth rounder back in 2022. Not really relevant. And then they get a first in 23, which was Adam Poitras, which is obviously the biggest factor for them, I think. But it's difficult not to look at that trade. And also the fact that they took Watson at 2, and there are guys like Owen Grant, Alex Simmons, Will Johansson, Brett Dobson would be an interesting one, right? Ty Spurts, so many players that have really come on well. So it's tough. And I don't mean to be negative about Dylan Watson. Like I said, he's a very good player. I just think he was kind of miscast.
That's sorry to jump in here, but my favorite part of the show is when you guys deep dive into that. Because, like, hearing that trade perspective from only what I know, which is the players that are playing, and just watching that last game, thinking McCombie might be the best goal scorer on that team at moments, like he really is, like, that just seems so. I mean, hindsight's 2020, but wow, what were they thinking? I mean, Connor Fields, I don't even know what else to say. It just blows my mind. So thanks for all that deep insight, because without that, I would just still have not known. But looking back at it, I'm like, Las Vegas, what were you doing?
Yeah, it's a tough one, and it's unfortunate for GM Williams that was kind of his first big move in the National Lacrosse League. But he's now trying to build something better. Also, just as quick update for Las Vegas, when I was at the game in Albany a couple weeks ago, you saw Marshall King working out with the team. He didn't play in that one, but I would imagine that he would be ready this weekend. They have a bye the week after this weekend, so we might get to see a little bit of Marshall King in the offense with Dylan Watson if they both play this weekend. So that will be interesting injection for them.
Nice. Okay, we are going to wrap up that section. There is lots more to come. Not too much. I mean, we're going to be reasonable in our length, but we are going to talk awards. We're a third of the way through the season. We'll talk about who we're thinking at this point for MVP, defender, transition goalie, rookie of the year, and we will be back to that on ITWOBL, on Blue Squatch Productions, and Inside the Cross. I'm Steven Stamp with Greg Beecher and Adam Levy. We'll be right back.
Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate all the support. If you'd like to be able to comment and talk with Steven Stamp and Adam Levy during these live shows, join the Blue Squatch Productions membership on YouTube. This allows you the opportunity to comment during the live shows and access to our Discord, where you can ask questions ahead of time and get real-time responses. Thanks so much, everybody.